Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Affairs of State. My name is Michael Jefferson, and I'm here today to talk about investing. Now, in the African American community, many of us, and especially if you've grown up in the country, I'm originally from Mississippi, and if you've ever grown up in the country around older um, individuals, you've always heard of, and I know some of the younger generation, they're probably saying, okay, where is he going with this? But being, as you can see, a little bit older, you grew up around individuals that may have said, well, I'm going to keep my money in a coffee can, or stuff it in my mattress. This way, I'll never lose my money. And but if the house burns down or someone comes in and raids your home, then they have your money. And when I grew up, I found out 2 years before I was born, our house did burn down. Unfortunately, one of my aunts also, um, when I was around about 9 years old, her house burned to the ground. So those are not areas that are best, the best way to invest your money. And the one thing that I can easily say, if you truly want to invest your money, there's there are many other ways in which I would recommend you investing your money, and throwing your money into a can or stuffing your mattress with the money. That is not the wisest way for your funds to be invested. That's one thing I must say more than anything else. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking about budgeting and I was talking about investing. And one area that I did give information on was how you can essentially take a small amount of money each week. Now, I know a lot of us, we may not have a lot of cash. And it doesn't matter if you're African American, if you're Caucasian, if you're Asian, Indian, it doesn't matter. Especially with the COVID-19 situation, a lot of us have been cash strapped. I guess that's the best term to say. And we're trying to figure out ways to recoup, ways to save, ways to just have some extra money on the side. And what I'm about to show you, this is one way for you to start investing in yourself. Um, the banking industry historically has not been a high yield of revenue for anyone. You can't really make a lot of money in the banking industry, especially if you're looking to open up a savings account where you're getting maybe a 1% or less than 2% on your investment, and whether your savings or whatever the case may be. But yet and still, they're investing your money, and they're getting high returns on your money that you put in their bank. So let's not forget that. So how do you think banks are able to stay in business? They're not staying in business because they ask you if you want a loan and you're saying no, and yes, yet and still they will try to push you to get a loan. But yet and still, whatever money you have, they're actually investing your money so they can stay in business. So let's not get it twisted. Banks are in business to make money, and let's take advantage of what they have. So as I said, one of the things and one of the items that I actually pointed out to us earlier, maybe about 2 to 3 weeks ago, was a way to actually invest in yourself. And one way was to go for 52 weeks. For 52 weeks, if you commit yourself to go 52 straight weeks, and I'm going to go into some other areas, but this was one way. If you were to go 52 weeks, the first week you give $1. And as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and bring this up. This is the chart that I actually brought up. And as you can see, week 1, I put in $1. Week 2, I deposit $2. Week 3 is $3, and so on and so forth until you get to week 52. And so for each week, if you are disciplined enough for each week to give that amount of money, in 52 weeks, you would have saved $1,378. I cannot stress this enough, people, that this is now an investment in yourself. And a lot of people say, well, I have debt, I have bills to pay. But yet and still, if you don't take the time to invest at least $1 a week, that's at least $52 in a year. But if you follow this method, whatever week it is, you put in that amount of money. Week 1, $1. Week 2, $2. Week 26, $26. Week 27, $27. Week 46, $47, and so on down the line. Whatever week it is, you start off today and you just put aside. Now the bank teller will look at you. Are you crazy? You're just putting on $1? Yes. But if you do online banking, then what you can do through online banking is that you can systematically do this yourself. Have a second savings account set up to where you are literally doing this yourself. And then in a year's time, something that you have been planning for, you have that account set up already. You already have that saved up. Now, for those who can do $2, this spreadsheet that I have, you can create this in Excel. And through Excel, if you want to, instead of doing $1, do $2. If you want to increase it to $3, and have Excel go down the line to say by week 52, okay, what am I putting in? And you have that information. But this is something that you have to be disciplined in doing. And if you can follow up and follow through, depending on how much money you're making, this is something that you can literally commit to, and you can reap the benefits of your own self-discipline. Now, how much effort does it take? It doesn't take hardly any. But you have to be disciplined enough to make sure you follow up and follow through. And the one thing is that once you do this, you have to make sure that you have to decide whether or not these are going to be long-term investments or if they're going to be short-term investments. And what I mean by that, if it's going to be a short-term investment, you're looking at a certain rate of return that you're going to have on your investment. And as I said, this is something that you have to decide upon. Your short-term investment plans, or whether it's going to be a long-term investment plan. There are some decisions you have to make. Also, you have to decide on how much you want to invest. Now, as I said, if you are working with a smaller amount, a lot of people will say, well, that $1,378, that's how much I would have eventually put in to the bank. Yes. But guess what? It's your money. It's your savings. And this is something that you must take the time to realize you have to invest in yourself to have your own savings. Because if you don't, then when you need it, will you have it? And if you don't have it, then all of a sudden you will take a step back and say, oh my gosh, if I had just done this 2 years ago, then look at what would have happened. And in 2 years, with over $1,300 saved up, you would have had 1378. You would have had over $2,700 saved up in 2 years. So think about, and in 3 years, and so on and so forth, how much money you would save up within yourself just making, and that can be considered a short-term investment. But if you never ever have to touch it, if you never have to touch the money, and even getting 1% rate of it return on your investment, oh my gosh, you've invested in yourself. And all of a sudden, you have something that you have created, and you are creating your own independence to now where you can easily say, oh wow, my refrigerator just died, my dishwasher just died, I got a repair I need to have on my car. Where am I going? Oh, wait a minute, I have savings. Now you have money that you can go back to, that you have been disciplined enough to save your money, and now you can go back and dip into that money, pay for those repairs that you need to have taken care of, and now you have something that you can refer back to. Now also, if you just decide, you know what, once a year I'm going to take a vacation, this is your way to have a vacation. This is your way to save up for a vacation. A lot of us, we're trying to figure out a way to balance. I had a friend of mine every year, God rest his soul, every year he would save up for a trip. And this was one of the ways that he saved up for a trip. And he mentioned that every month, every pay period, he would put money back. And every year or every 2 years, he would go on a trip. But he was disciplined enough to make sure, and if you notice, I'm using the word discipline because this requires discipline for you to be able to follow. And if you follow it, it will pay off. But it's up to you to make sure it pays off. Now, for you beginners that are out there, these are some of the things for you to consider. First, think about how long you plan to invest. And as I said, for that method, putting $1 aside or going up to that $52 for 52 weeks, think about how long you plan to invest. Think about what your financial needs are. And because if you're doing long-term investment, and especially if you're young, what you want to do, you want to think about your retirement. At the age of 25, 30, 35, you're like, why am I thinking about retirement? I want to have fun. I'm going to wherever, and I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to party, and I'm just going to have a great time. The only problem is, if it's God's will, you are going to get old, and you will need to have a retirement, because unless you're having your own business, unfortunately, some employers will say, once you reach a certain age, they will say, well, you know what, great, but if you're not moved up high in the company, you will be downsized. Unfortunately, in some areas, or eventually, even if they want you to stay around, eventually you will want to retire. Now the question is, do you have enough funds to retire on? There are individuals who are working for companies today that do not have a set retirement age, but because they don't have any money saved up, or 401k where they considered having long-term investments, they have to continue to work. And the reason why they have to continue to work is because they never thought about long-term investment, and especially investing for themselves for when they decided to retire. And these are areas that we must consider in the African American community, because um, heaven forbid, we have someone young that passes away. And I was at two funerals. There were two funerals this past week. One was someone who was 30, one was someone who was 35. They were taken care of and they were buried properly. But heaven forbid you have someone that's young that passes away. Do you want to find yourself going for a GoFundMe page? Unfortunately, these are areas that we must consider. We must consider. We have to consider just for our own safety, as for our own well-being, and when we pass, to make sure that we don't saddle our family members with our debt. So you want to make sure that you consider your financial need, how long you intend to invest, and also, depending on the area that you're investing in, how much risk you are intending to take. Because, and I'll get into this a lot later, just a little bit later, but depending on the area that you're investing in, there could be very small risks, or there could be a lot of risk. It just depends on what area you're looking to go in, and also how you intend to, what's called diversification, how you intend to diversify your portfolio, the areas that you're investing in. So you want to make sure that when you're considering these, and some of these areas that you will consider, whether they will be stocks, bonds, or other short-term investment areas, these are areas that you must consider how you're going to decide to invest. Now, as we take a look in some of these areas, I want you to consider why some of these areas. One of these areas for you to consider is stocks. You hear on a daily basis, well, the stock market is going up. Well, the stock market is going down. This is a bear market. This is a bull market. What the heck does this mean? Well, what happens is that when you have businesses like Microsoft, Starbucks, Intel, Apple, those are businesses that have gone public. And those are businesses in which you can actually invest in. And you have businesses that are out there today that some are doing a lot better than others. And those businesses that are doing a lot better than others, you have the opportunity to invest in those companies. Now, of course, the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, the General Electrics, the General Motors, the Fords of this world, those companies are all public. And some of those companies you can invest in, and then you can invest in a particular industry, whether it's medical, whether it's plastic, food, any area that you choose to invest in. And I know I'm not drilling down today, but depending on your area, these are areas that you, as an investor, you must take the time to do your own investigation. You must take the time to do your own evaluation of these companies, because depending on how you want to invest will depend on who you invest in. Because for me, and I'll get to this a little bit farther, but I'm going to bring it up now, I'm very aggressive. My wife is conservative to moderate investor, but I'm very aggressive. I believe in high risk, high return. But notice what I said, high risk. So you have to determine how you want to invest your money. And another area that a lot of people have discussed is during your investment, you want to make sure that when you invest that you have the time to make sure your investment builds up, and that those funds that you're investing, that even though they're at risk, you can afford to lose it. And the reason why I say it, high risk, high return, the high risk, also can say you can lose those funds. And that's why you have to determine whether your investment period is going to be short term or long term. Because when you invest in stocks, what the situation is in terms of the stock market can go up one day and it can go down. During the Obama era, you saw lots of gains, but of course, he had to deal with the previous president, and he was able to bring the stocks and bring a lot of companies back. His predecessor, so the president right after President Obama, he was able to ride the coattail of a very good president and how he managed his 8 years in office. And because of that, the stocks did very well. And then all of a sudden, because of during that time, that particular president's behaviors, his reactions, the stock market decided to go down, and because of other areas. And it would take a lot more time for me to go into those, but and especially an investor could give you more information on that. But what happened is that you had a lot of volatility in the stock markets during those years when he was in office. Now, since you have President Biden in office, now you have more stability in the presidency, and we see where the potential of business opportunities going. Now you have more stability. Yes, will there be volatility in the stock market? Yes, there will be. But in terms of stability in the White House, that's also another area that we must concern ourselves with. President Bush, when he was in the White House, was there stability? Yes, there was stability in there. However, one of the areas that he had to concern himself with was the attack on America. And that had some issues that he had to deal with, as well as some other bad decisions that he made as being the president of the United States. So when you look at your investments, you have to take a lot of things in consideration when you're investing. And as I said earlier, short-term, long-term investments. And in terms of stocks, you have to make a decision on how you want to invest. And if you're investing in stocks for short term, it's going to be very unpredictable. But if you do it doing a long term, historically and traditionally, the stock market has had great gains. Another area that you can invest in are bonds. My great uncle, and as I mentioned earlier a few episodes ago, I lived with my grandmother and my great uncle. My great uncle had no children, but what he did is that he invested in bonds, in U.S. bonds, and every so often he would buy a United States bond for $100, and over a period of time, that particular bond would build up so much interest on it. And I'm not going to say how much that was saved up, but for what he invested in and what I found out that I acquired in my inheritance from him was pretty nice. And this was what he invested in. He invested in U.S. bonds. Now, you can invest in all sorts of bonds, whether they're city, whether they're company bonds, whether they're bonds of all types. But as I said, this is something that you have to do your own investigation in, because there are many city bonds that you can invest in. Just listen at what your city is doing, where they're having to secure bonds for a particular area that they have to work on or they're building in. And so do your investigation to see what areas you can buy bonds in and have a return on your investment in this area. And but my uncle, for what he did for me, I can tell you, I was the beneficiary of his smart money management. And for what I have to say, for his management of his funds through stocks, I'm sorry, through bonds, he was able to. I was able, I should say. Let me back up. I was able to reap the benefits of his planning and his preparedness and his investigation of what would be best for him and how best that he could invest his money. So, to my uncle, thank you. May you rest in peace as well, because you made some wise decisions when it came to investing. And hence the reason why it's so important that I pass this information on, because if I don't, then what happens is that eventually it will come back to me to say, well, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you mention this to anyone? And I don't want to have that hanging over my head, because this is one of those things that I really do want to make sure that I mention more than anything else, and that others are able to reap the benefit of it more than anything else. Because the one thing is, the more information you have, and if it can be passed on to others, and if you don't, then what happens is it's almost as bad as um, in the Bible, where it talks about the talents, and where the one man had one talent and he decided to bury it. And what happened to that poor individual is that, based upon what was said in the Bible, is that because he decided to bury his talent, it was taken away from him and given to the man who had more. Now, how do you like that for you for something? So, for the man who had more, it was given to him. I want to be that guy. I want to have the more, and I want to have more of it. And if I can, then thank you very much. But another area that I do want to show is what I'm actually preparing to show you now. As soon as I get this all fixed up, is, as I said, I'm aggressive in terms of how I invest, and my wife happens to be very conservative in how she invests. But once I get this particular chart set up for you, I do intend to have you see this and then discuss in more details here. And this is about how you can invest and how it can show up better for you. So let me go ahead and get this displayed here for you. And as I pull this up, then you will see what I mean about the investment. As I said, I'm an aggressive investor. And what you have here, you see in the legend that you have over on your left side, you see where it says U.S. stock, foreign stock, bonds, and short-term investments. And as you can see, this is the conservative view. And this is something that my wife would do, whether she's doing conservative or balanced. Her area of consideration has always been either to invest conservatively or to invest in a balanced portfolio. And as you can see, the average annual return on these investments are, if you do conservative, is 5.96%, almost 6% of investment. But you also have to consider the risk. And the worst 12-month return, you had a negative 17.67%. That's really bad. But look at the best 12-month return of 31%. Now, if we just look at a conservative view of how they invest, you have 50% going into bonds, 30% going into short-term investments, 6% going into foreign investments, and also 14% going into stocks. And as you can see, you have, in terms of the conservative way of investing, you have, those are your yields. That's how much you're earning. That's how much you're earning during those periods, and also your risk. The worst 12-month return is 17.67% from the conservative. Now, if you have a more balanced approach, now in terms of your balanced approach, you can have almost 8% of your annual return, but at your worst, you can have 40%, almost 41%. But your best 12-month return is 76.57% of your best. But your worst 20-year is only 3%. You're still making money, still after 20 years. But this is for long-term growth. Notice it says your worst 20-year annualized, but your best 20-year is 13.84. Now, the historical volatility, as we take a look, going back to the conservative, is 4.49%, and going back to balance is 9.56%. Now, let me first say is this. The site that I procured this information from, the site that I got this information from, is Fidelity. And I and my wife and I, we both have funds in Fidelity, and we do a lot of investment with Fidelity. And Fidelity they are not paying me to say any of this, but because of where my investments are going, and we do have investments in other places, but because this is one location where we do invest in, I like their information because it's straightforward, to the point. And am I suggesting to you to invest in Fidelity? No, I'm not, because there are many, many, many other places where you can invest and where you can place your funds, and where they can actually sit down and discuss with you and ask you questions on your desire to invest. And this is what you can do. And by taking this information that's actually on their website and just reviewing it and doing your own investigation to decide how much you want to invest, this will help you in the long run of making your decisions. Now let's continue on to take a look at this chart here. Now, as I said, we were at the balanced area. Now let's take a look at growth. This is coming close to my area, but I do a lot of growth area as well. But your average annual return is at 9%. Not bad at all. But if you look at your worst 12-month return, you're looking at almost 53%, a negative. Which means, and what does this mean? When you're seeing a negative number before anything, that means let's just take $100. If you take, and my wife will probably throw something at me if I get this wrong, but I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. But let's just take $100. And if you invested $100, and over that 12 months, it's 53%, it's a negative 53%, your worst annual average for your investment, that means you have lost $53 of your $100 that you have just invested. it says 52.92. To me, let's just make it a plain number. That is $53 of your $100 you have just lost. That means of that $100, you only have $47 left. That's what that means. But, as it says, the best 12-month return, if you do growth, and excuse my dog in the background, your best 12-month growth, if you just invested $100, that means you would have earned $100 and 109% and 55%, 0.55%. So that means you would have earned more money. So this is what you need to consider as you're doing your investment. It's all about investing, but making the right decisions with your investment. Now let's take a look at the aggressive growth. And this is my area. This is where I mainly focus. And if you take a look across the board, from the conservative to the balance to your growth area to your aggressive area, what is being invested and how much is being invested in what area? So when you take a look at the aggressive growth, you have 60% in the aggressive growth that's going towards U.S. stock. And so for U.S. stock, that means high risk, high return. And that's what's happening there. And for those who are like me, this is what you're looking to risk. And I just want you to just take a quick look at this without me saying anything, just so you can look and just see what it says. High risk, high return. But your worst 12-month return is a negative 60%, 60.78%. That's a lot over an average of 12 months. But the best, and if you notice, across the board of all of them, it is the best in terms of all of them, the best 12-month return of all of them at 136.07%. But of the worst 20-year return, which is annualized, of all three, you still make money, but it's also the lowest at 2.66%. For the best, though, 20-year return, you're also looking at 16.49, which happens to be the best. Now, historical volatility, because with the stock market, it goes up and down all over the place, and that is at 15.76%. And this is something that we must consider, and that, as I said, that as you go through your investment and investing, these are some of the areas that we must consider. We must consider the risk. We must consider the areas that you want to invest in. There are a lot of areas for you to consider, and as beginning investors, you must consider these areas, because if you don't, then you would have made these big mistakes. And being new investors, these are areas that you cannot afford to make mistakes in, because if you are someone who's working on limited assets and limited funds to invest, and then the minute you see your money going away, even though you're doing a long-term investment period, there's something else that's required, especially if you're doing long-term investment, especially in the stock market. It's called patience. Now, when you see the stock market going down, that's something hard to do. My wife and I, during the time of the previous president, when we saw the volatility in the stock market, we checked our portfolios quite often. just to see how much money was being lost. And this is something else for you to consider, is that you must pay close attention to your portfolio. You must watch where your money is going, how your money is being invested. And then once you do, then this is a way for you to maintain what is best for you, whether it's best to do mutual funds, whether it's best to do stocks, whether it's best to do bonds, whether it's best to just have a savings account. Um, you just have to make these decisions, and this is something that you have to sit down with your spouse or discuss with someone, whether it's Fidelity, whether it's an investment company. It doesn't matter. You need to discuss it with someone to make the right decisions. And is it necessary to stay aggressive? Is it necessary to be conservative? Or should you have a balancing act? Or what is best? Because when it comes to investment, no one has the answer. Let's just keep it there. No one has all of the answers. If that were the case, granted, you do have some Warren Buffetts out there in the world that are just rich beyond measure. Bill Gates, who's rich beyond measure, and many others who have, because of their investments and because of their inventions, have become very wealthy. You have to make sure you make the right decisions for yourself, because whether you have several $100, several thousands of dollars, several hundred thousands of dollars, or millions or billions, you must make sure that you make the right decisions for yourself in terms of investments. Make sure you diversify. And what I mean by that, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. That means you must spread it out. Because if this area is not performing well, then this area may perform well. If this area is not performing well, then this area may do well. Or, depending on how things are going worldwide, everybody could do well, and your portfolio can continue to grow. But you want to make sure that you review your portfolio regularly. And what I mean by that, review where your money is going regularly to see if you need to change up, make other decisions, or just do a wholesale change altogether. So you know, okay, none of this is working. Let me try something else. And if you need to, so be it. But at least you have made the decision, because it is a decision that's based upon everything that you see with the market, all of your investigations that you've done, in seeing where your money is going, seeing what area your money is being invested in, which area is performing better. And depending on which area is performing better, you may want to put a small percentage more over in this area, because over the long run, if you have been truly paying attention to your portfolio and how it's been performing, then you can make better decisions. But if you're new to this, if over a period of, I would say 3 months, but I would keep a daily check, but over a period of 3 months, then you would have developed historical data that you can base your decisions on. Because now, after a 3-month period, you have your historical data to make better decisions. Don't just jump just because you see the stock market plunge. It's going to plunge. You're going to see some dips, you're going to see some peaks, you're going to see some valleys. But regardless which one, you have to make that decision again, whether it's going to be long-term or short-term. And if it's long-term, leave it alone. Check your portfolio periodically. And if you need to make some decisions to change from one stock to another, then do so. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Okay. And with all of that being said, this is pretty much what I intended to cover today for investing. Now, if you have any questions in regards to this or in regards to any area of investing, please give me a call. I can be reached at 317 879 9049. That number again is 317 879 9049. And with that being said, I pray and hope that each and every one of you have received your vaccine so you can go out and continue to enjoy time with family, time with friends, be able to go out to see a movie, be able to go out to a restaurant, be able to go out to the upcoming football games that will take place in the next couple of months. Oh yes, can't wait for it. I'm sorry, letting my exuberance get the best of me here, because my previous show was Block Sports, and we talked about upcoming football games and upcoming football schedules. But make sure that you're in a position, if you're investing, to be able to go to these games, and not only that, being able to be a supporter of your local HBCU. And if you are, then you're able to give back to your alma mater and then see how well your alma mater is being able to perform because of your investments. So with that being said, may God bless you, may God keep you, and until next week, we hope to have a special guest. I have to confirm to see if she's going to be able to join me. But until then, see you next week here on Affairs of State. God bless.